Okay, we're live. It's Coffee with Zenium, 9:30 in the morning Pacific time, August 19th. I got Nicole Blevins with me. Nicole, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so this is gonna be fun. We're gonna talk about how to build and structure a successful HR department function within your organization. You've got an interesting background. You started internally. You moved across the country, which I want to get into in a little bit. Um, Describe some of the Well, actually, first, what's your current role at Zenium? Let's start there.
Yeah, so currently I'm an HR business partner at Zenium, and I've been here almost a full 2 years now.
Mostly
So
during the pandemic.
mostly during the pandemic, yes.
Excellent. And then before then, what kind of internal HR roles did you have?
Yeah. So before that, I've worked in a lot of different industries in HR, from a call center type of environment to nonprofit, healthcare to local government, which my most current job was as an HR generalist with a local government entity in Florida. And then prior to that, I've worked as an HR assistant. I've also had some more specialized role as an HR training and development specialist to a risk and benefits coordinator. So I've really been able to work in a lot of different areas in internal HR to really get a full feel for all those different roles in HR that you can have in a internal HR structure. So it's prepared me really well for the role I'm in now at Zenium. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. With all those roles that you've had internally, how did you fit within the structure? Was there a lot of HR people? Was it just like you and you're sort of touching everything? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. I would say for the most part, I was a part of larger organizations that had a very structured HR department.
Mm.
So, employees in the 300s to 500 employee range. And so there was HR departments ranging from 3 people all the way to over 10. So just a lot of different opportunities or areas, just really depending on the size of the organization. And I feel like a lot of times as organizations grow, the structure kind of just evolves on its own,
Right.
right? Now we're having to do a lot of more benefits types of things. We're just going to add someone to do that, or just kind of naturally growing and evolving from there without a like true structure or methodology in
Yeah.
place.
Well, it now seems like, given the current circumstances, HR is having to really dive into internal communications with COVID and the response around that. So it's amazing to me how many skills HR people have to develop long term.
Yeah, you have to wear a lot of different hats in HR. There's so many different aspects to HR. There's the communication piece, there's the compliance, there's the employee relations, there's the discipline and performance management piece, and benefits. I could go on forever. There's so many different things in HR, which is why really being mindful and being able to structure something like that and determine what do you really need in-house versus what are some things that someone else externally could support with and provide value with, and also making sure that all of those different ends or areas are working together seamlessly to better support the employees and the organization as a whole.
What areas do you like the most? If you were to pick an area of HR that you like.
Yeah, I really like problem solving. Like, I'm a big problem solver kind of person. So I really enjoy the employee relations or the performance management
Hmm.
piece of things because I look at it from the mindset of like, this is a situation or a problem that I can really come in and help support and solve in the best way, instead of looking at it as something that, like, oh, okay, we just need to take care of this and move on kind of thing. So I would say if I had to pick a certain area of HR, it would be that. But I also really love all areas and don't see myself as someone that could be siloed and just doing one thing or
Right.
one particular area of HR.
You recently became certified mediator too, and maybe that's why you went down that road. Is you actually like the employee relations aspect of it? Have
I
you been able
do.
to use a lot of those skills recently?
I have actually. I've completed all my training. There's there's a really rigorous process you have to go to with the small claims court as well as the local mediation association.
Mm.
So I finished all my training and I've actually got to do about 3 full-scale mediations so far, and I have another one
Wow.
coming up next week. And I've also been able to do them kind of informally with some of my clients at Xenium, just kind of helping to solve some internal employee or employee manager conflict. So it flows really naturally with
Yeah.
what I'm doing in HR as well, and plays to my enjoyment of trying to help solve problems and performance management and all those employee relations types of things.
One of the things that I find so fascinating about HR is like there's this very reactive piece to HR, and then you can't really get to the proactive stuff, but you always have your sights set on like, oh, let's build a great culture and let's build this process and do all these things. And I'm curious with your internal roles in the past before coming to Xenium, how much of the time did you spend on proactive things and what kind of initiatives would those be?
Yeah, that's a really awesome question. And I think that is really one of the main differences that I see in internal HR versus being in the external kind of consulting model that I'm in now is when you work internally in HR, it is more of a reactive kind of process, right? Where your structure is evolving over time because you see this need. Oh, we need more help with benefit stuff. We're going to add a person here. And it's more reactive and just really focused on the transactional work of we need to enter in these employee changes into the system, and we need to make sure that this review process gets done every year, or just more of that transactional or reactive HR work. Whereas what I really like about the external piece and what I get to do now is it is more um, transformational or proactive work where
Yeah.
we're still helping with that reactive stuff, right? Like an employee relations item comes up and we're in there and just helping try and put that fire out and work on that with the client as well. But also we get to hear about what's going on and make suggestions on, well, have you thought about maybe implementing a different onboarding process that will help better retain employees if you're noticing that your employees are leaving within the first few months? So just things like that I really love about my job now and that I see as the main difference is when you're internal, you're trying to do as much of that transactional or putting the fires out that you don't necessarily have the time to really think about or see some of those more proactive things that you could be doing. And then also when you're internal, that's kind of all is that organization and that
Right.
history and maybe your past work experience too as an HR professional in other organizations. But working on the external side of HR, where you work with so many different clients in different industries, you see things that work and things that don't work, that you can share that knowledge with your clients as well and help them implement something that is similar that might work for their business. So that's kind of what I've been seeing or what I've noticed making that transition from internal to external.
Yeah. Well, internally, it's interesting because you don't know what you don't know. Like if you
Yeah,
grew up inside of an organization, or all you know is that culture, the people, or the processes you have in place. You're sort of operating within that ecosystem, unless you go out and seek knowledge or get help.
right.
Have you in the past ever used any external resources from an HR perspective to plug in? Like I'm in marketing. I use marketing consultants every once in a while when I know I have a gap. Did you
Yeah.
ever do that in HR? Is that common?
Internally, in internal HR, yes, sometimes, but not very frequently. So, like some examples of situations in which we would seek internal or external help being on the internal side of HR is to do like a compensation study. So, we
Right.
don't have a certified comp analyst internally in a smaller organization
Hmm.
sometimes. And so, outsourcing that or getting external help for things like that was a big one. Recruitment as well, like really specialized positions using recruiting firms, things like that. But on a consulting basis, HR, I would say largely not. And quite frankly, my years working in internal HR prior to this, it never really even crossed my mind as an internal HR professional that there are external HR consulting firms and like what the benefits of that might be just because you're so in it. You're so in the work and doing that reactive things that you don't really stop to think that like what other options are out there to help me like broaden my horizons and be more proactive and be able to implement some really great things. So I think it's something that needs to be shared more because it doesn't cross your mind when you're in internal HR. And there's a lot of employees that will have been with your company for 20 years, 30 years, which is awesome, great. We love those people and we want to retain them, and we love that they're there for so long. But it also presents a gap in that there's maybe not any other organization or ideas or structure that they've been exposed to. So being able to be open to that and see some opportunities for external help, I think can be a big thing.
I think in the next, maybe even now, I would imagine if people are going to hire external help, it's probably going to be recruiting.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I just
Yes.
imagine with this, maybe it's all overblown, but this like great resignation, I think Sherm was the one that came out with that article, and everybody's been
Yeah.
talking about it and panicking about it. Like, oh my gosh, there's going to be this mass exodus. And of
Yeah.
course, I'm not helping it because I talk about it a lot. I'm like, okay, be prepared, like retain your people if you can.
Yeah. I've seen it referred to as the turnover tsunami too. I've seen that
Yes,
article from
yeah,
Sherm and those
yeah,
type of things. So yeah, I definitely see that being on the rise. But also that's where proactive HR comes into play as well, is being able to work with our clients and say, what are some things that we can be doing to think about that? Have you done an employee survey to make sure that your employees are happy, or what are some things you can put
yeah.
in place to retain them? And all of that is where this external structure versus the internal structure kind of comes in and can really help.
Speaking of surveys, this
Yeah.
is not an intended plug, but we're running our Zenium "What People Want from Work" survey. That it's great for HR people or leaders of organizations to participate in. Basically, how it works is people will sign up. We'll give them a survey link. They'll send it out to their organization with instructions about how to do it. But it basically asks people what they want out of their work, leadership, culture, the work environment, all these great things. And it's free to participate. We do all the analysis. We give them a report in the end. And it's nice to, even if you're going to do nothing throughout the year, and it's like, okay, we need to ask our employees what's going on. This is a
Yeah.
perfect time to do it. So I'll put a link in the comments shortly. But I also want to encourage
Yeah.
people, if they're tuning in right now, we're streaming on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, to ask Nicole questions. This is a time where you get a chance to ask her whatever you want. So feel free to chime in. I'll monitor the comments. Um, you worked for the city in Florida,
Yeah.
and that's gotta be an interesting dynamic. I mean, just working for a city, I'm sure it has its own challenges, but, like, what challenge HR challenges, people issues would come up in a city?
Yeah. Great question. Prior to working for the city or in local government, all my prior experience was private employers, nonprofit, not local government. And so it certainly was a change going from that into local government. It really is its own thing, really. It's a lot different than other types of HR and other types of organization because it's public service, and the work that
Right.
is being done is very different. And the people that you're serving are the citizens, right? And not a customer that's paying for a particular service directly, exchanging direct dollar amounts or things like that. So it really is totally different. And the challenges that it presented are different as well. So in local government, there's unions.
Oh,
So that
right.
is not that there's not unions in other places, there certainly is, but there's a police department and a fire department that have unions and kind of operate with their own DOGs or guidelines and things like that. And so you're managing not only the overall city handbook or policies or things like that, but multiple collective bargaining agreements that are like their own mini handbooks or sets of rules that you have to
And
follow.
it's for
And then,
every, like, police department, fire department, they'd all have their
right,
own union and set of rules.
exactly, their own set of
Yeah.
rules and guidelines. So it's kind of like you are HR for multiple different companies
Yeah.
internally, like in
Yeah.
one organization. So you have to kind of shift your thinking depending on who the employee is or what the employee relations issue is, what guidelines you're looking at and looking at both to see what items apply to that situation. I will say it prepared me well for the role that I'm in now. Obviously, I have a lot of different clients and I have to juggle different industries and different problems that those present in handbooks and policies. So it was kind of a good segue. But those challenges are a lot different, and complaints from a customer is a lot different than a complaint from a citizen or a member of
Mm.
the public that you have to kind of respond to. Another thing is public records. There is public records laws that apply to local governments where all emails and everything is public record within some limitations, obviously. But in HR, you're like, well, everything's confidential, right? It's confidential. It goes in the
Right.
employee file. So it's
Not
like
in the
shifting
public
that,
case.
right. It was shifting that mindset from not in this case, or only really limited certain things are confidential or public, not to public knowledge. So yeah, it was very different, and it was good experience for me to shift kind of in and out of that, and prepared me well, I think, for the role that I'm in now. And after leaving there and kind of moving here, kept in contact with a lot of the people there, and they actually are one of our clients now. So I
Wow.
mean,
Okay.
yeah, it's awesome.
You left in good terms then.
Yeah,
That's
of course.
great. So let's talk about the move. Like, why, for one, why consulting model? Why did you decide to go that route after being internal? And why Zenny? I mean, why'd you move from Florida to Oregon and take a leap like that?
Yeah. Well, I have obviously been listening to the Transform Your Workplace podcast since being in Florida when I was going to school for my master's degree at Rollins College, and I was driving 45 minutes every day back and forth to school. I had to listen to something, and I was like, it has to be something that's going to further my professional development. So I kind of came across the Transform Your Workplace podcast and was listening to it almost every day, and just thought that it sounded like nothing I'd ever thought about, external HR. I didn't even realize that was a thing or what was out there, and just sounded like a really cool model because you're focused on more of those proactive ways to help organizations and help push them forward, which is what I really wanted to do. It can be defeating sometimes internal HR when you're just doing that reactive or transactional work and you're like, man, I really want to make like
Right.
things better and not be
Yeah.
so reactional all the time and try to be more proactive. And so yeah, I that's kind of how I learned about Xenium, and I just decided that was something I really wanted to do. And when I saw the opening, I took that leap of faith and applied, and made the decision to drive 4 days all the way from
Oh my
Florida to
gosh.
Oregon and move over here, which was a long haul, but I really love what I'm doing. And I it's different when you're on the consulting side too, because
Mhm.
you get a lot of appreciation from your clients. Like when you help transform something, you get thanked so much by clients, and they really see the value in the work that you're doing. And internal HR, you don't always get thanked from the employee that you help, right? Or the other department
It
leaders
is like a
internally.
thankless job in some way. I think
Yeah, it
internal
can
anything is
be.
kind of thankless. Yeah, uh,
It can be for sure. Yeah.
yeah. Let's talk about what are you doing for clients on a regular basis. So in the consulting model, like I imagine it's different for every client that you touch, but what are you doing on a regular basis to help transform their culture?
Yeah. It is very different for each client, but I would say like a big one that I would bring up is like stay interviews. So that's
Oh
something
yeah.
internally you don't usually have a lot of time to do, right? Is meet with all the employees and check in and do stay interviews kind of thing. So we have that as a project that we offer to clients, and so I've been seeing a rise of requests for that because of that retention problem and that turnover tsunami we were just talking about.
Hmm.
Is people are wanting to make sure that their people are going to stay and that they're happy
Right.
where they are. So being proactive and being able to do that and look at trends and making sure that employees are happy and comfortable with where they are and not looking for other things. So I would say that's a big one. Employee surveys, you just mentioned
Mm.
the what people want from work. I think is going to be really awesome and helpful to a lot of organizations if they want to participate in that. And then just the employee relations things that come up on a day-to-day basis. Like I mentioned, those are more of those fire or the reactional things, but they're really great opportunities to be transformational in that from us talking through that situation with the client, we learn and can help explain or suggest things that they could do in the future to prevent something like that from happening, or changing a process or a procedure around to better meet the needs of their employees, and using that experience as more of a learning experience rather than, okay, let's fix this and then just move on to the next thing very quickly after. So those are some of the things that I get to do that I think is just what I love about my job, and it's just really fun.
Mhm. With the setup or the structure in which you're helping some of these organizations, are you usually wrapping around somebody like HR staff, or is it an office manager? Like, who are you typically working with?
Great question. It depends on the size of the organization. A lot of times, if it's a smaller organization, like 10 to 20 employees, it's usually like the owner that I'm partnering with, or the CEO, or those
Right.
individuals that are managing, or the operations or office manager type of individual that has the transactional role of HR, right, where they're processing payroll or handling
Mhm.
some of those file management and those types of things that you have to manage, and wear multiple hats in when you're a smaller organization. And then for larger organizations, it usually is their internal HR contact. So it would be the HR director, HR manager, or their group of HR individuals for that client as well. So it really varies. And I would say the determining factor is really the size of the organization. Is
Right.
as you grow, you need to have more structure in place, and that's when you tend to say, okay, we're at a point where we might want to have a dedicated HR person or more HR support.
What types of issues are you seeing pop up with your clients right now? What questions are you, like, if there's sticky issues or things that you're helping with on a regular basis? I'm curious if let's start there, and then I got a follow up for you.
Okay. Um, well, I would say it's compliance is a hot topic right now, obviously, with the masks mandates
Oh,
and all of
just
that.
so
COVID
many rule
is
changes. Yeah.
Yeah, COVID is front of mind. So it's a lot of compliance, dealing with sticky situations in terms of employees not wanting to go back to wearing masks, or,
Mm,
like having those conversations with employees, I would say is number one, just because that's probably like an everyday conversation or things that we're having with our clients. Um, Outside of that, I would say just how to keep employees motivated. So, working from home for so long and being disconnected, like a lot of
yeah.
employers and organizations are right now, you know, it's leading to more burnout, and it's leading to just concerns with performance declining, and things like that. So that's been a topic that I think has come up quite a bit, in that we're navigating right now with a lot of our clients to really help them figure out how to keep people motivated, how to avoid that burnout, and push the organization forward.
Is there any difference between like some of the issues you just described? I'm gonna guess no, because this seems like a very timely thing. But with your time as an internal HR person, were those issues similar, different, way different? Like, describe that.
I would say some of the issues were similar. A lot of the issues were similar, I would say. But I would say what is different in the external model is when you're internal, even if you have a large HR department where you've got a person doing, risk, comp, benefits, whatever,
Yeah.
although you work together as a team, it's still like highly confidential, right, within an organization. So the HR
Sure.
generalist wouldn't go to the benefits person or another member on the HR team to talk through a scenario and try to bounce ideas off of each other. So I think what's different and what's great is that in the external model, they get to bounce ideas off of another HR person that
Mm,
they know it's going to be confidential, right? We're not within the organization and talking to other people within the organization, to really get another person's perspective. And that's what's great about having this huge team at Xenium is I have my own experience and backgrounds in HR in different industries, and another person has theirs. And so, with us talking about it together, we bring new solutions out of that type of collaboration and that type of conversation that may not happen, internally, whether you have a larger HR department or not, just because of the concerns that that brings up for people. So yeah, I would say the problems are the same, but the approach to how you solve them
Mm.
is the key and is what's different.
What are the pros and cons to being an external consultant now? I'm sure
Yeah.
there's some good and there's some bad.
Yeah. I would say the pros are a lot of what we talked about already is being on the external side. You do get to be more proactive. You do get to be more collaborative. And, I can talk to many people internally on the Xenium side and get all their ideas to bring back to my client or just talk to the client directly about that. So there's that opportunity. There's also the opportunity to be a lot more creative and
Mm.
with your solutions that you're sharing or you're bringing to clients. Um, so that's what I would say are the main pros is a lot of what we've kind of talked about already. And then in terms of the cons is just really you are not working for one organization anymore, right? You have, like 30 clients or all these different clients that you're supporting. And so like time management becomes really important, right? You're literally flipping from talking to one client to another client to another client.
And
Sometimes
checking emails in between. So
exactly, and trying to check emails in between and then like fix your hair for your next Zoom call. Yeah, so it's, a lot of like back and forth and you have to really be good with your time management and good with really being able to switch quickly back and forth
yeah.
between tasks like that, which isn't for everybody. Not everybody can do that. So yeah, I would say that's kind of the main challenge with it is just having to really flex your style. And then
Mhm.
every industry or client is different and the way that they want guidance or support is different than how another client wants to receive that information. So just a lot of style flexing, a lot of time management, and multitasking is what I would say.
Let's put yourself in the shoes of a business owner right now.
Okay.
You have a unique perspective as an external HR consultant right now. So you work with business owners a lot, but you also have this life in internal HR, and so you've got a really awesome vantage point from both sides. Now, if you're a CEO or an owner of a company that
Okay.
let's say 25 employees, but and
Okay.
you need HR, how do you structure that department? Or is it even a department at that point?
Yeah. So when you hit 25 employees, you do start to get some more compliance type of things that apply to you. Federal and state laws, I start to come into play a little bit more than what you had to look out for before. So I think when you hit 25 employees, you definitely need some type of HR support. But I don't know that you need a full-time, 100% internal person. So I think a model like what Xenium has, where you have an HR person that you can call upon for questions and navigate some of the issues that might pop up from time to time when you have just a small department of 20 or small organization with
Mhm.
25 employees would be sufficient. If
But
you're growing,
who's working on the proactive stuff then? We talked earlier
yeah.
about, like, the strategy, the people strategy stuff. So if, like, you're an owner who's in growth mode and you wanna hire the best of the best, how is just an external consultant gonna help you?
Yeah, I was just going to say
Okay.
it depends on what your goals are too. There
Yeah.
are a lot of clients that I've talked with where they're happy where they are and they want to stay, this small business that they are. But if you're really wanting to grow and, be aggressive with your growth and hit 50 and 100 employees and really grow from there, it is really important to be proactive. And I think sometimes there are organizations that want to grow, but they're not growing. And it's that proactive piece that's missing and really having those support systems behind you of, an organization like Xenium or these other, other
Mhm.
organizations that are out there to help you get to that point and to be proactive. So you're setting yourself up for success so that when you hit 25 employees or 30 or whatever, you're not scrambling to try and, do that transactional work or figure those things out. You're set up and ready to go for when that happens.
What about at 50 employees? Did anything change then for you? Would you hire an internal person? Would you have more of an outsourced model? Like what would you do?
Yeah. I think when you hit 50, even more, laws and requirements come into place. So the compliance piece is still a really huge part of it. But also 50 employees is when you start to say, well, there's a lot of employees. So we need a lot more structure and policies and
Hmm.
procedures in place at this point. And so I'm still kind of on the fence. I do think having an internal person that's dedicated that, but to that kind of transactional work, but really having someone paired with that to work together on the more transformational and
Hmm.
proactive piece of things is really important.
So in your mind, let's say you got 100, you got 100 employees.
Okay.
What's the ideal structure that if you had your choice, a budget unlimited, didn't really matter. What are
Ooh.
you how are you structuring your HR department? Knowing that your goals are to keep growing, to retain the people you have, to attract people, to stay compliant, all the things that your HR function is really supposed to do. How would you structure it in terms of either internal or external resources?
Yeah. Oh, unlimited money, unlimited
I know,
everything.
right? You could do whatever
Wow.
you want.
Yeah. Um, well, I think recruiting is a really important function, especially if your goal is to aggressively grow. So having someone that is being able to be dedicated to that type of work or really partnering with other internal leaders to make sure you're finding the top talent, because that's really a big piece of what's going to help you grow, right? Is having really awesome talent that's going to keep you growing, keep you making money, all of those things that come into play. um I think you need to have obviously some type of HR leader or manager in place to be able to really work with. Again, I will always, from going internal and not having worked with an organization like Xenium or too many external, and I swear I'm not trying to be salesy, but I would always recommend partnering with an organization like that just because I can hire 6 people to make up my HR department, and have a recruiter, have a benefits person, have a compensation person, have a director, all of that. But again, those people coming in will have, just their set of prior experiences and organizations that they've worked with that they're limited to, whereas working with another firm that has worked with tons of organizations that have grown their businesses and have a ton of HR professionals that combined have probably worked for hundreds if not thousands of, organizations in the past, brings something that having 100 people or whatever in your internal HR department isn't going to bring. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. And again, I'm not here to be salesy in any way, but after coming and seeing and learning what I know now on the external side of things, going back to internal, that would always be part of my recommendation. And it's still important to have that recruiting person, that benefits person, because there's more of that. That's still that administrative or transactional work that you have to do and you have to get done and keep your employees happy. But there's so much more that you can be doing, and having that outside perspective is what's really going to get you there.
What do you think are the biggest threats facing organizations related to just people processes, whatever, in the next year or two?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's hard to even think about the next year or two because I feel like we just passed a whole year or two and I still have a little whiplash from that. But
Mhm.
I think retention is going to be really important. I also think work-life balance. I think from working remotely and everything that has happened over the last couple of years, people are a lot less willing to give up a work-life balance, if that makes sense. They're a lot less willing to like sacrifice themselves to do more and work all these extra hours and go all of these different places because of the events that have happened over the past couple of years. So I think supporting employees in that and helping them maintain a good work-life balance and helping to prevent burnout and things like that that can lead a person to leave an organization because burnout has become so prevalent and retention is going to be so important in the next 1 to 2 years. Um, I would say those are some of the biggest problems, as well as technology. I'm sure you've seen there's all kinds of new technology that's coming out to
Tons.
help with the remote work and everything that's been happening. Some things that look super cool. And, people are going to have to learn to use to really be able to make effective in their organization. So just kind of focusing on some of those technologies that are coming out and training up people to be familiar with that to make the best use out of that.
Let's talk about you for just a couple minutes, and
Sure.
then we'll wrap up. I was telling you this before we went live. Your ability to like educate yourself and like you just do such a good job at that. Like I wish I had all the time in the world to like get all these certifications and do all this stuff that you're doing. How do you develop your HR skills? How do you know that like which skills you want to develop for one, and then how do you make time for all of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I am just honestly a big, giant HR nerd. I don't know how else to say it or put it lightly, but I am just a person that literally always has to be doing something or learning something or growing in some way. And so I do read a lot of books and I kind of decide these things on a whim, like the mediation thing. I was just kind of sitting here one day and like, it's what do I have to do after 5 o'clock today? There's a pandemic, everything's locked down. Why don't I go become a trained mediator and go
Yeah,
through
yeah.
this because I like solving problems and would love to help people resolve conflict. And so I don't have a great plan in place for these things. They just kind of happen, or I'll be like, what's on LinkedIn Learning today? What courses can I watch? And I don't have small kids at home or anything like that, and not going out anywhere right now. So I do have time on my hands, outside of work hours and the time that I'm putting into work to really think about what do I want to do? What are some things that I'm interested in that I want to learn more about? And how can I use it in a way that's going to grow my career and will apply well and overlap well with the work that I'm doing and provide value to our clients as Xenium and just my life as a whole. So that's I really don't have a good good structure or plan or thing to recommend. I'm just kind of like, yeah, sure, let's
Yeah,
watch a
yeah.
video on this today.
Do you open up YouTube and just start searching, or do you have a LinkedIn Learning subscription or something
Yeah,
like
I
that?
have LinkedIn Learning. So I'll look in there for things on mediation, conflict
Nice.
resolution, yeah, really just LinkedIn Learning, podcasts. I listen to podcasts as well. And then just reading books. We have been reading a lot of books at Xenium internally, white fragility. So you want to talk about race. And also, I kind of look on books that are about diversity, equity, and inclusion and hidden biases as well, because that's something that's important to me.
Hmm.
So I'm reading another one called Blind Spots, which is hidden biases of good people. And it just all relates really well to what I'm doing in HR and with mediation and that kind of thing. So I just really want to continually learn and grow in that area because that's how I can pass that knowledge and that information on to others and help them in their organizations and on their journeys. So
Advice for HR people who are listening to this right now, like if they're newer in their HR career and want to go about learning and growing and things like that, where do you direct them to?
yeah, I would say be a sponge and talk to people as much as possible. You wouldn't believe how just having a conversation with another HR person that you know, want to connect with will say, have you read this book, or have you heard about, you know, this podcast? Like every day I feel like I hear stuff about that and find really awesome recommendations that way. But LinkedIn Learning too is like an awesome wealth of knowledge. When I discovered it, like my mind was like blown. I was like, oh my God, how did I not know about this sooner? And if you have a subscription to your local library, it's free through your local library. So you don't even have to pay anything for it. So I highly recommend that. There's so many great courses and videos on there regarding HR, but also other topics that you might be interested in as well, like software programs. If there's certain softwares you want to learn, there's all kinds of things on there that are just really cool. So I highly recommend just doing that, you know, instead of like scrolling through Facebook or social media like I'm guilty of doing a lot. You know, say instead, I'm going to take just a couple minutes and watch this short video for my
Yeah.
own professional development.
I love it. Nicole, it's been such a pleasure having you on and just sharing your career, your history, your expertise, all of that. I really appreciate you, and I'm glad you're on the Zenium team.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here. It was great talking to you.
Great talking with
And
you too.
feel free to connect with me if anyone out there has questions. I'm happy to talk further.
Fantastic. All right. Have a great day.
All right. Bye.